When you read Kings and Chronicles, and we've been going through First Kings, and we finished First Kings. When you read through Kings and Chronicles, Jehoshaphat is a king that stands out. We've heard his name over the last, we were off the last 2 weeks, but before that, we spent a week in Second Chronicles dealing with Jehoshaphat. And before that, we saw him a couple of weeks in a row. So he's a king that stands out. But in First Kings, he stands out kind of it seems like for all the wrong reasons. That's what it seems like when I'm reading through it. He helps Ahab and Ahab's son in battle, which nearly cost him his life. He makes a marriage alliance with the house of Ahab. He makes business alliances with the house of Ahab. And that's like, not really good things, because Ahab's a really wicked, evil person. And he does some good things. That's kind of how you read about Jehoshaphat in Kings. But when you're getting into Second Chronicles, you have a little bit of a different picture. You have a bigger picture of a king who follows David's example. I mean, the good parts of David's life. So we see major reforms during his rule. We looked at that in chapter 19 a little bit. He appoints spiritual judges and leaders. He calls those leaders to teach the people spiritual truth. Today, though, Jehoshaphat finds himself in another war. So the last war we saw him was he went to go fight with Ahab. Now, remember, I'm taking 2 weeks off of the Kings to just fill in some stuff about Jehoshaphat, because we really don't get a big picture of what's going on with him. And I just kind of wanted to look at two places where we got a better picture of things. Jehoshaphat finds himself in another war, only this time he's not going to war as an ally. It's like not an optional thing. It's not like, hey, Israel's asking him to come help. War has come to his doorstep. War has come to him. War has come to the land of Judah. 2 Chronicles 20 and verse 1. Now it came about after this, that is after the whole situation with Ahab, after being rebuked because of his alliance with Ahab, after instituting some spiritual reforms. And now it came about after this that the sons of Moab, who layeth their heads down in the land of the Moabites, the sons of Moab and the sons of Ammon, together with the sons of the Meunites, came to make war against Jehoshaphat, and which is an absolute disaster, because these armies have risen up against the king of Judah. So you have these three armies: Moab, Ammon, and the Meunites. If we take a look at some of what's going on here, what we've been dealing with is the king of Israel, Ahab. Sorry about that. Ahab fighting against Ben-Hadad of Syria. But now we're kind of moving south, and we're focusing in on the king of Judah. Well, the king of Judah is Jehoshaphat, and you have the sons of Moab and the sons of Ammon, and they're not small enemies. I mean, they're not huge enemies, but the Moabites are a long-time enemy of Israel, and the Ammonites are another long-time enemy of Israel. And then there are the Meunites. And, if you look up the Meunites on a map or an atlas, you're not really going to find a whole lot about those guys. They show up a few times as enemies of Israel in 1 Chronicles 4, 2 Chronicles 26. But later in this passage, we're going to see that Ammon, Moab, and Edom are joined together. And you'll read that with me. So this is not something that I'm making up or anything. You're going to actually see it with me. You're going to see the people from Mount Seir, which is Edom. We're going to see these guys. So all these Transjordanian, and the Meunites are down by Petra. So Petra's off this map. So if we were going to probably place Petra, we'd place it somewhere down in here. And these guys are like 10 to 20 miles down the southeast of that area. And they're planning to attack. Check this out. I want to show you a general feel for where these Meunites come from. Now, this is kind of fuzzy. It's not nearly as good as what my computer screen looks like, But it gives you a feel for, and Matt, you can attest to that, right? Pretty big difference. Pretty vast difference between what I'm looking at and what's on the wall there. But some of it might be because of, the texture of the wall and because of the age of those projectors are 10 years old, so it is what it is. But the point I'm trying to show you here is desolation. So the Meunites, down in the land of Edom, it's desolate. And here's kind of like another, in fact, this morning when I talked about where Aaron died on Mount Or, remember he was the OGHP, right? He was the original high priest. It said that he died right there on the top of that. I don't know, you can see the highest mount in there, the highest mount in the realm there, right at the very tip is a little monastery to Mount on Mount Or. So that's it right there. That's a little monastery that's up there where Aaron allegedly died. And here you can kind of see, the desolation of the land. It's just desolate. There's nothing down there. There's nothing down there. But, there's enough of a force to join together with the people from the land of the Moabites and the Ammonites where, they're ready to gather together and to come against the king of Judah. Now, there are a couple of political factors that are going on that we can easily miss if you don't understand historical context. Now, think about what had just happened. We had Israel and Judah go in a fight against Syria, and they lost. So now you have a weakened Israelite nation, and you have what is perceived to be a weakened nation of Judah, and you have these guys saying, hey, we're going to break free. We're going to come against them, and we're going to take some land. We're going to take some spoil. So the enemies see that they're weakened and that they're not the army that they had once been. At least that's what it seems like. And they come against them. And not only that, but the king of Moab, for any history people, and I'm not really a big history person, but I like biblical history, and I like history that surrounds the Bible because it helps me understand the Bible more. But there's a king over there you may have heard of. His name is Mesha, king of Moab. And you might know about this guy from the Moabite stone. Have anyone here ever heard of the Moabite stone or the Moabite stele? Anyone know archaeology people here? Well, he kind of like writes down some of the stuff that he did. And so it's historical. You have this extra non-biblical history of a king of Moab named Mesha who was conquering different areas. Well, Mesha is becoming strong, and he writes about his success in battle against Israel, and now he has his eyes set on Judah, and he gets the help of the Ammonites and the Edomites. And these three kings, they want to take over. Remember that land that I showed you? You say, well, there's nothing over there. And yeah, there really isn't much there. The Ark of the Covenant was there, because that's where Indiana Jones found it. But that's not really where it was. But there's nothing there. But it's important, because if you're controlling this area, you're controlling all the trade that's coming. We've talked about this, that comes through the King's Highway and comes up the Saudi Arabian, the Arabian Peninsula, and all the stuff that goes into other regions like the other parts of the Fertile Crescent over in Babylon and up in Syria. You're controlling all that. So there may not be a whole lot there, but it's a significant area, and they want to expand on that. They want to take land on the east. They want to take down the king of Judah while he's weak. And Jehoshaphat finds out what's going on, maybe through lookouts in the area. The lookouts see the movement of troops, and they report back to him. And look at verse 2. Then some came and reported to Jehoshaphat, saying, a great multitude, not like a band of men, a great multitude is coming against you from beyond the sea. And in this case, that would be, in context, that would be the Dead Sea. This great multitude of people are coming to you from beyond the sea, the Dead Sea, out of Aram. Well, now we've got to stop for a second and take a look, because that's Syria. So now the king of Syria, who had just had Ahab killed, he had won in battle against Israel, he's orchestrating this whole thing. So he's kind of part of, maybe he hasn't sent his army. From the text, it doesn't look like he's quite sent his army, but it seems that he's had his hand in orchestrating these armies coming up against Judah. He wants to bring Judah down. So this is pretty serious business right here. And Jehoshaphat hears about this, and they're coming out of Aram, out of Syria. That is, they're organized at some level from the Transjordan area. And behold, they are in Hazazon Tamar, that is, En Gedi. So just to kind of give you a feel for what's going on here. You have these armies. They're gathering down. Now, these guys have the Meunites down. They have Mount Seir over on the eastern side of the tributary that runs south of the Dead Sea. But most people are going to have the Edomites down in obviously where it says Edom on our map, down in the lower right-hand corner. And these guys all kind of band together and come up along the Dead Sea. And there's not a whole lot down there. It's kind of like sneaking in through the back door. So, En Gedi is right smack in kind of like the middle of the whole thing. And you have lookouts there, and you see these troops coming up, and you're in trouble. You're in trouble. These troops are coming up, and you're done. Now your war is coming, and they're gathered together. This is En Gedi. Anyone remember the name En Gedi? Anyone remember anything that happened there in Scripture? I'd say this is Bible trivia for 600? Maybe 400. Maybe 4. We raise our hands here. We're not cavemen. What's that? Obi-Wan? No, not Obi-Wan. That was Tatooine. Yes. Go ahead. David kind of hid out here in En Gedi. And there's really not a whole lot around it, but there's like a little, there's a stream of water where you can sustain yourself. I took this picture, and you can kind of look down in there. That little stream, you see that little white strip down in the back? Can you see that right over in here? That's the stream that you saw here of water that's coming down. So, if you look out towards the south and towards the east, you'd see something like this. So you could see for miles and miles and miles, you could see troop movement. So it only makes sense to have some stuff set up here at this point. And these guys are gathering here, their armies are gathering here to go fight against the people of Judah. Well, anyway, Judah is not really heavily defended here, because they don't have to be heavily defended here, because nobody in their right mind would come up through here. But this is what they're doing. They're sneaking in through the back. It's actually not a terrible plan if you're trying to be deceptive. And that's kind of what's going on. And when Jehoshaphat hears about it, look at his response in verse 3. Jehoshaphat was afraid. Jehoshaphat was afraid. He experiences fear. You ever experience fear? You ever experience extreme fear, terror, horror? I like to instill fear in my family members. So what I do is when the car pulls up and I hear the car pulls up, I'll go and I'll stand right behind where the front door opens, and I'll just, right by where we hang the coats, and I'll just stand there and blend in with the coat. They never see me. And I stand there, and Roxanne will come in, and she'll kind of like look around here. She doesn't even see me. She doesn't even know I'm there. She could almost look right at me, doesn't know I'm there, and she'll walk right by. Isabella walks in, and the last time I did it was just a few days ago, I think, and she was like, like the look of horror. It was the best. Oh man, I laughed so hard. It was so great. I mean, I can't remember ever scaring her that badly before. And I've scared Roxanne too. They're easy. But I like to instill horror in that way because it's fun. You know what I mean? But this would not be fun because this right here, the stuff, the antics we pull, that's all in good fun. We laugh about it, and it wouldn't be fun if. Well, last night I heard a noise. Yeah, the kids take the dog out, and I heard a noise like someone moving, and everybody's upstairs. And I heard someone move in like the sunroom, and the dog was like on alert. Like the dog looked freaked out. And I went out there, and I'm like, someone's in this house. You know, did the kids not lock the door? Like, what's going on here? Well, it was one of my coat fell off of a, you know, but you hear that coat fall, and you just heard a person move, you know, and you're on alert, and you feel that moment of, if someone might have just broken into my house, you know, the kids didn't lock the door, that type of a thing. If someone enters into your territory with a great multitude of people, they're not coming in there. They're not coming in there to, you know, have tea. You understand? They're coming in there to kill you. And if you're the king, they're coming in there to kill you or to subject you in some way. So he's afraid. And we've seen fear leading to all kinds of bad things in the past. For instance, Saul's fear. What did Saul's fear lead him to do? He was afraid. He was afraid of David. He sought to kill David. He was jealous of David. You know, Saul has killed his thousands, and David is 10,000. Oh, man. He was like, he was afraid of what was going to happen at the battle with the Philistines. And he consulted a witch at Endor, right? A medium. Bad. Jeroboam was afraid that the people would return to Jerusalem. And so what does he do? The first king of Israel in the north, what did he do? Do you remember? Out of fear of the people, lest they return to Jerusalem, unless they return to David, he builds 2 golden calves, one in Dan and one in Bethel. Bad. What's Jehoshaphat's fear going to lead him to do? Jehoshaphat was afraid and turned his attention to seek the Lord. He doesn't build altars. He doesn't go and consult a medium or any of that type of stuff. He turns his attention to seek the Lord and proclaimed a fast throughout all Judah. So Judah gathered together to seek help from the Lord. They even came from all the cities of Judah to seek the Lord. So he doesn't even say, hey, you know what? Let's go up and consult the son of Ahab. And let's get the son of Ahab. I don't even know that there's time for that. He turns to the Lord. He proclaims a fast. He seeks help from the Lord. And they come from all the cities of Judah to seek the Lord. Now that's a healthy response to fear. That's a healthy response to fear. This is exactly what you should do when you're afraid. This is exactly what you should do when there's trouble. You turn to the Lord. You turn to Him and to His truth. You seek His truth and His guidance. That's exactly what the king of Judah is doing right now. And we miss this if we don't look at Chronicles. We go through the kings and we just see a guy that helps Ahab, and we see a guy that helps Ahab's son, and we see a guy that makes a marriage alliance with Ahab's family, and we see a guy who makes business alliances with Ahab and Ahab's son. But what we don't see is this. We don't see some of the great things, some of the great reforms that he carried out. Here, the people of Israel are being led by their king in a great revival. Sometimes, as goes the leader, so go the followers. This is national revival here, led by the king. And it's a glorious moment in Judah's history at this moment where they turn to the Lord for help. And during this revival, the king prays to the Lord. Jehoshaphat praises the Lord. Check this out. Look at some of the elements in his prayer. In verses 5 and 6, we see praise for the Lord's authority. Then Jehoshaphat stood in the assembly of Judah and Jerusalem. So this is like a public thing in the house of the Lord before the new court. So they're in the temple complex. And he said, "O Lord, the God of our fathers, are you not God in the heavens? And are you not ruler over all the kingdoms of the nations? Power and might are in your hand, so that no one can stand against you." And so he recognizes, here in his prayer, he recognizes who God is, the God of the fathers, the God in the heavens, the ruler over all the kingdoms of the nations. He recognizes what God possesses, power and might, and unmatched power and might. No human or human army can stand against. So he's setting himself, and turning to the Lord, he's setting himself in the mindset and recognizing who God is and praying to him. He praises the Lord for his promises to Israel in verses 7 through 9. He has to hold on to those promises because utter destruction is at the threshold of his doorstep. That utter destruction which could fly in the face of the promises that God made. But he says in verse 7, "Did you not, O our God, drive out the inhabitants of this land before your people Israel and give it to the descendants of Abraham, your friend, forever? They have lived in it and have built you a sanctuary there for your name," in Jerusalem, built a sanctuary there for your name, saying, "Should evil," verse 9, "should evil come upon us, the sword or judgment or pestilence or famine, we will stand before this house and before you, for your name is in this house, and cry to you in our distress, and you will hear and deliver us." God is the one who gave this land to his people Israel, and Israel inherited this land just as God said, and they set up a place of worship just as God said, and now these uncircumcised are trying to steal it away? They're trying to take away what God had promised Israel? Jehoshaphat brings up Solomon's prayer. You could read about that in 2 Chronicles 7, 12 through 14, a prayer that Solomon made at the dedication of the temple when they basically, they had just built it. A prayer that God answered, that God promised to answer when his people would pray in that place and toward that place. And if their enemies came against them in 2 Chronicles 6, 28 through 30, if their enemies came against them and they prayed in this place, that God would deliver them. And that's what Jehoshaphat's doing. Jehoshaphat has decided that he is going to follow what Scripture says. He praises the Lord for his authority and power. He praises the Lord for his promises to Israel. He prays about this enemy invasion in verses 10 and 11. "Now behold, the sons of Ammon and Moab and Mount Seir," which is in the territory of Edom. That's always connected with Edom. A lot of times you'll hear Edom in the prophets. Edom is called Mount Seir and vice versa. The sons of Ammon and the sons of Moab and Mount Seir, whom you did not let Israel invade when they came out of the land of Egypt, they turned aside from them and did not destroy them. See how they are rewarding us by coming to drive us out from your possession, which you have given us as an inheritance. When the people of Israel left Egypt and wandered 40 years in the desert and went to inherit the promised land, God showed grace to these people. They didn't invade these lands. They invaded Sihon, king of Heshbon, and Og, king of Bashan, and some of that Transjordanian territory, but they didn't invade these places. Some of these places might have come against them at some level, but they showed grace. They showed grace, and they didn't go against those people. And now, look at how they're repaying Israel. They're trying to come in and conquer Israel. They're not showing the same grace that God showed. And so Jehoshaphat is turning to the Lord, and he's appealing to the Lord's justice here. And he's praying for the Lord to intervene in verses 12 and 13. "O our God, will you not judge them? For we are powerless before this great multitude who are coming against us, nor do we know what to do. but our eyes are on you. We don't know what to do. We don't have the human numbers to match this great army that's coming against us. All our eyes are on you. Jehoshaphat realizes at this moment that his help comes only from the Lord. That's his only chance. It's his only hope. So he leaves it in the hands of their powerful God, and an awesome time of revival and a powerful prayer of faith. All Judah was standing before the Lord with their infants, their wives, and their children. It's an assembly of people who have gathered together to worship the Lord and pray to him and ask him for help. They felt fear. They responded by turning to the Lord. They responded in faith. And God answers. Check it out, verses 14 through 17. Then in the midst of the assembly, the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jehaziel, the son of Zechariah, the son of Benaiah, the son of Jael, the son of Mattaniah, the Levite of the sons of Asaph. The only name you really need to remember there is Jehaziel. Okay, that's the prophet, Jehaziel. Okay, so the Spirit of God comes upon Jehaziel, and he says, "Listen, all Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and King Jehoshaphat, hear ye. Thus says the Lord to you, do not fear or be dismayed. Do not fear or be dismayed because of this great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God's." Do not fear or be dismayed. The battle is not yours, but God's. This is God's battle. This is God's victory. Kind of reminds me of something that Moses said to the people of Israel at the Red Sea. Moses said to the people, "Do not fear. Stand by and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen, you will never see them again forever." It reminds me of something that Moses said to the people of Israel 40 years later in Deuteronomy 20, verses 1 through 4. When you go out to battle against your enemies and see horses and chariots and people more numerous than you, does that apply in this situation with Jehoshaphat? That certainly applies to Jehoshaphat's situation. He's seeing a great multitude of an enemy coming against them. Do not be afraid of them. Why? For the Lord your God, who brought you up from the land of Egypt, is with you. When you are approaching the battle, the priest shall come near and speak to the people. He shall say to them, and again, this is in the context of the people who are inheriting the promised land hundreds of years earlier. He shall say to them, "Hear, O Israel, you are approaching the battle against your enemies today. Do not be faint-hearted. Do not be afraid or panic or tremble before them, for the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies, to save you." And now, hundreds of years later, we're hearing that same message to a later generation of Israelites. Do not fear or be dismayed, for the battle is not yours, but God's. Now, it's easy to say, don't be afraid. It's a little harder to not be afraid, isn't it? It's a lot easier to give that advice than to actually act on that advice. And so God gives a little bit more. God gives them specific instructions about this battle. Check this out in verses 16 and 17. Tomorrow, go down against them. Man, that's kind of bold. Go down. I mean, we can't beat these. God's fighting this battle. We're going to go down. Tomorrow, go down against them. Behold, they will come up by the ascent of Ziz, and that's near En-Gedi. And you will find them at the end of the valley in front of the wilderness of Jeruel, which I'll show you where that is on an atlas. You need not fight in this battle. Station yourselves, stand and see the salvation of the Lord on your behalf. Just watch. Just go and get your popcorn and watch. Stand and see the salvation of the Lord on your behalf, O Judah and Jerusalem. Do not fear or be dismayed. Once again, tomorrow go out to face them, for the Lord is with you. And so Israel is to go down. This is kind of zooming in on the atlas here. If we were zooming in on this area of En-Gedi, or zooming in right in here, they're to go down to the ascent of Ziz and watch the Lord fight their battle for them. Well, that's got my curiosity piqued a little bit, like, interesting. So what's going to happen? Is God going to bring down fire and brimstone upon them the way he brought judgment against Sodom and go, I don't know what's going to happen. Let's just go see what's going to happen. That's what Israel does. They go see what's going to happen. Check it out in verses 18 and 19. So Jehoshaphat bowed his head with his face to the ground, and all Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem fell down before the Lord, worshiping the Lord. So they hear these words. They worship. The Levites from the sons of the Kohathites and the sons of the Korahites stood up to praise the Lord God of Israel with a very loud voice. So they bow down and worship. They lift up their voices in song. They sing praise to the Lord. And the next day, they go to watch the Lord fight for them. But before we see them go, we see more praise. We see more worship. They arose early in the morning and went out to the wilderness of Tekoa. And when they went out, Jehoshaphat stood and said, Listen to me, O Judah and inhabitants of Jerusalem. Put your trust in the Lord your God, and you will be established. Put your trust in his prophets and succeed. And I know what it's like to not listen to his prophets, because I went to fight at Jabesh Gilead with Ahab, even though the Lord's prophet told me not to. Micaiah told us not to. And look what happened. So you listen to the Lord. It's like Jehoshaphat finally learned his lesson a little bit here. We don't see that in Kings. So, it's a really important part of Jehoshaphat's story. When he had consulted with the people, he appointed those who sang to the Lord and those who praised him in holy attire as they went out before the army and said, Give thanks to the Lord, for his loving kindness is everlasting, his mercy endures forever. So the army goes out with the Jerusalem choir, the Levitical singers, and they sing hymns of praise to the Lord and watch. And they look down on the rugged, chalky, waterless void of nothingness below, down along the Dead Sea where nothing survives. And by the way, if you go to the Dead Sea, it's like you go to a normal shore and you see like sand, and you go to the Dead Sea and the shore is salt. It's salt. I mean, it's just pure white salt. I mean, it's not pure white because it's dirty feet if you walked across it and stuff, but it's salt, which is strange. It's strange to see a beach with like a layer of salt in front of it. There's nothing down there. There's nothing that can really survive down there. So go down there and watch the battle. And they do it. They sing praises, and they watch the Lord fight for them in verses 22 and 23. When they began singing and praising, the Lord set ambushes against the sons of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir, Edom, who had come against Judah, so they were routed. For the sons of Ammon and Moab rose up against the inhabitants of Mount Seir. They rose up against the Edomites, destroying them completely. And when they had finished with the inhabitants of Seir, they helped destroy each other. So what happens is, I don't know exactly how it happens. We don't have the exact description, but it seems that there's some like a spirit of distrust is put within them, where the Ammonites and the Moabites are like, I'm not feeling so good about the Edomites. Let's get these guys out of it. And they turn against the Edomites and wipe out the Edomites. And when they're done, they turn against each other and they fight each other. And the Israelites are just there watching these guys who came in unison just start fighting and killing each other. And you're seeing all these armies of people that were coming against you, and you're just watching them just stabbing each other, shooting each other with arrows, killing each other. You're watching a war against each other and wiping themselves out right in front of you. And that's how the Lord, I mean, wouldn't that be something? It's like, oh man, what's God going to do? Fire, brimstone? And then it's kind of almost comical. It's like you'd be sitting there watching it, waiting for the spectacle, waiting for, whatever's going to, it's like me in the solar eclipse the other day, waiting for the solar eclipse, got my glasses, had the chairs brought out, I'm ready to go, yeah. And then all the clouds came. And I'm like, what? No. And my brother's sending me pictures from Lake Placid of like a perfect solar eclipse. And I'm like, no, I hope he sits in traffic for 8 hours. Or something like that. No, I had been so sorry that I didn't go at the moment. I was so down, and he's like sending me pictures of me. I'm like, please don't talk to me about it, because it just hurts too bad. I'm going to Orlando when I'm 67 years old to watch the next one. I was so disappointed because I didn't see what I expected. But I think if I were these guys, it didn't happen how I expected, but it happened. And you're watching these guys just turn and fight each other and destroy each other, and you're seeing God's hand of deliverance through that whole situation. These enemies of God turned on each other and fought each other, and Misha and his massive army became a pitiful band of men, and the fight is over, and the Lord wins the battle. And Judah does not even have to lift a finger. Verse 24, when Judah came to the lookout of the wilderness, they looked toward the multitude, and behold, there were corpses lying on the ground. They're all gone. They're all dead. No one escaped. And so Israel goes out and gathers the spoils of war in verse 25. When Jehoshaphat and his people came to take their spoil, they found much among them, including goods, garments, and valuable things which they took for themselves, more than they could carry. And they were 3 days taking the spoil because there was so much. They were so much fear only a day or two earlier, so much fear only a couple days earlier, and now they go to the battle to see this great thing, and they find dead bodies and spoil everywhere. And they get rich. They get rich off the spoils of war that they didn't even fight. And the fear of God was upon the people. They returned to Jerusalem in worship. On the fourth day, they assembled in the valley of Berachah, for there they blessed the Lord. Therefore, they have named that place the valley of Berachah until today. Every man of Judah and Jerusalem returned with Jehoshaphat at their head, returning to Jerusalem with joy, for the Lord had made them to rejoice over their enemies. They came to Jerusalem with harps, lyres, and trumpets to the house of the Lord to worship. And the dread of God was on all the kingdoms of the lands when they heard that the Lord had fought against the enemies of Israel. The Lord put them into confusion. The Lord put a spirit of distrust among them, and won the battle. Maybe not by casting down large stones from the sky as he did against the Philistines, or fire and brimstone as he did against Sodom and Gomorrah, but nonetheless delivered them. God wins the battle. The Lord rules over the nations. No human army could compete against him. And all Judah and all the foreign lands, they fear the Lord. They see his awesome might and power. And Jehoshaphat's rule is established in peace. So the kingdom of Jehoshaphat was at peace, for his God gave him rest on all sides. And so what we see in this episode is fear that led to the turning to the Lord. In turning to the Lord, they prayed fervently, they worshiped, they sung to him, they sang. They sang to him. Man, I'll never get that right. At this age, you think I should get that right. I'll never get it right. They sang praises to him, and prayer led to victory from the Lord, a glorious display of God's power and his love for his people and his commitment to his promises. In this passage, we see the Lord's commitment to his people, Israel, We see an impossible victory that God secures. We see that there is no reason to fear when the Lord is your God. Jehoshaphat's fear led to faith, and his faith led to worship and prayer, and God delivered. And that brings me, one, to the power and might of God and how God works. And that's really, I think, the main thing here. Look at what God is and does for his people. Now, we may not see that same deliverance today, but we do see that deliverance in eternity. Our promises are not necessarily for the here and now. Things may not go exactly how you want them to go in the here and now, but they will for eternity if you're a child of him, because he has promised a place for you, and his son has gone to prepare a place for you. But when I look at some of the practical aspects, maybe a secondary, I look at how we respond to fear, how we should respond to fear. Some people let fear become, they let it become like a debilitating thing in their lives. Like they're so afraid, like I've met people, they're afraid to go anywhere. They're afraid to even go to church. I hear excuses. Man, I hear excuses. God, I invite people to come worship all the time. And I've heard every excuse in the book. Believe me, I've heard every excuse 10 times over. And man, if I could only have like a dollar, just a dollar for every excuse I've heard for why people won't worship, I'd have some money. I'd be able to do some things. But I don't get any money for those excuses. But I hear excuses, and one excuse I hear is, I'm afraid I'm going to get sick gathering with people who congregate. And I'm like, well, you do go grocery shopping, right? And you go other places where people congregate, and specific places that I know where they might go where people congregate. And a lot of times people, I don't think there's real fear there. I think fear is the excuse that's used to try to appease my invitation at some level, which it never does. I'm not really big on excuses. Give me the real reason you don't want to come. That's the real reason you don't want to come. So I can handle the truth. I'm a big boy. You know what I mean? Or maybe you don't like me, and I can handle that too. I get it. A lot of people don't like me, but my wife likes me. I like me. But there are people who really do fear. And like Jehoshaphat, we need to place our faith in the Lord when we fear. We need to trust him because he knows what's best. And that all starts with placing our faith in the work of Christ on the cross. When we do that, we become children of him. We enter into a relationship with him, and we can trust him through the difficulties of life that, hey, even though that thing may not work exactly the way it did for Jehoshaphat at that moment, where it came out positive at that moment, we know that all things work together for good for those who love God, for those who are the called according to his purpose. We know that that's a reference to eternity. What God cares about is our eternity. Doesn't mean we're going to miraculously be healed every time we have a sickness, or that God's going to miraculously pay our bills, although sometimes that type of stuff, God uses people to make that stuff happen. And I've been the beneficiary of that stuff sometimes. There's been a couple times where I've had some things that I remember one time it was just a small gift card, and I had to have a babysitter, and I gave that gift card away and as a gift for someone to watch the kid. And I really wanted that gift because I really wanted to take Roxanne out to eat somewhere with it, and I had to give it away. And I was disappointed. I was so disappointed about giving it away. And then Monday morning at the seminary, there was a gift card waiting for me. You know what I mean? So poor seminary student at the time, and $25 didn't, maybe it was 50, I don't remember what it was, but it meant a lot. It meant a lot at the time, but that doesn't always happen that way. Your car may get destroyed, or your furnace may go, or your roof may need to be replaced, and nobody ever pays for that, maybe but you. So you may not have everything work out exactly how you want it here and now, but you do have a God who cares for you and wants what's best for you in eternity. And so sometimes you got to look at those situations and say, how do I respond to these situations in life? Fear, not just expecting God to pay the bills for me, but what does God want from me in life, and what is good for eternity? How does God want me to respond for eternity? And we know that the answer there is faith, that God wants me to trust in him. He wants us to place our faith in him, even in the most impossible situations that appear in life, and even when the results don't turn out exactly the way we want them to, because we know that God has our best in mind for eternity. And we know that God carries out his promises. His promises to Israel was the promised land and a perpetual kingdom through David, which was somewhat conditional and yet unconditional because one day Jesus comes back and rules. But for us, those promises are eternal. All right, let's take our hymnals and turn to 190. If you're not sure